From Fox City Stadium in Grand Chute, Wisconsin, wrapping up Day 3 of the 2017 Division III Baseball World Series, a day in which we got our two championship series contenders. Spoiler alert, Washington and Jefferson versus Cal Lutheran. We'll talk a little bit about how they got there. I'm Pat Coleman, joined by Jim Dixon, the editor of D3Baseball.com. And it was a day in which we got started a little bit late because of rain, but yet another beautiful day of baseball. We started with an elimination game between Roanoke and Concordia Chicago. Roanoke brought out a freshman left-handed pitcher, and he did really well.
He really did, and that's what Roanoke needed to sit there to get to the next game.
Yeah, Forrest Wagner, again, I mentioned he's a freshman, 7 innings, gave up just 2 runs, 4 hits, and the offense really came alive, especially in the bottom half of the third. 6 runs across for the Maroons on the afternoon, ended up with 3 RBIs for the shortstop Dean Hermanson, Will Decker, with 3 runs batted in as well, and Roanoke defeated Concordia Chicago by the score of 10-3. Wagner with the win improved to 3-1. Keaton Connor came back and took the loss. He fell to 6-4, and again, a day in which Roanoke would have to come back and play again. So after a few hours break, they came back and played Washington and Jefferson, having already lost to W&J by the score of 11-1 on Saturday. W&J still continued to have Roanoke's number, jumped on Rawlings Cumbie early, knocked around Sal Trancucci a little bit, and basically Roanoke had no luck getting W&J out. They got outscored 19-2 in the 2 meetings.
Coach Mountain talked about how important it was to win the first 2 innings, or first 3 innings, on yesterday's game. And he said, after the first inning, it was already over because Washington and Jefferson had already had enough runs to win.
It was 8-1 after 2 innings, and it was 8-1 as the final as well. Trevor Kerr got the start for the presidency, improved to 6-4. Ben Marsico came out of the bullpen, got a 3-inning save. That's a key point of information we'll come back to later. Nick Venta with the big bat. He had a home run, his 9th of the season, 4 runs batted in. Mark Merlino with a pair of hits and 3 RBIs as well. Will Black with 3 hits, 3 of the 8 for Roanoke as their season ends at 35-19. Now the other bracket, so W&J, they dispatched with Roanoke in 1 game, so they did not need a if-then game in the top bracket. Bottom bracket was battled first off in an elimination game between North Central and Mass Boston, and this is a game, Jim, in which Russell Ho came out and pitched really well. But in the end, what everybody is going to remember is the way in which this game ended in the bottom of the 9th.
You got to give a credit to Mass Boston. They were down by a run in the 9th inning. They came back and they got that run and they tied it up. And we went to the bottom of the 9th, tied 4-4. And
North Central led off the bottom of the 9th. Colin Walbacher hit a double to get on base, got moved over, and then get to the top of the lineup. He's standing on third. There's a runner on first, and Jeremy Quaddy comes up. He smashes a ball to third base. Third baseman knocks it down and just never picks it up. Quaddy gets on first. Walbacher comes in with the game-winning run, and they walk off with a 5-4 win. The I don't know about tragic necessarily, but the interesting / I guess memorable part, if you're a Mass Boston fan, the guy who was playing third base at that point in the game was Danny Brown. He had come in as a defensive replacement. They had pinch hit. Ryan McCormick had pinch hit in the top half of the 9th. They needed a defensive replacement. Danny Brown was a guy playing third base who was just basically playing out of position. They were out of third baseman. And, they put in a guy who's normally a second baseman, and eventually the ball found him.
Yes, they're normal. They had injuries. They lost their all-region shortstop, and they had to find a replacement. They found him in the infield, but they really did not have an option at third base when it came down when they needed a second.
Nick Rogalski blew the save in the top of the 9th, but he did pick up the win. He improved to 6-2. So North Central survived. They came back a few hours later, and they faced Cal Lutheran for, in essence, one more time in this regional after having played them just the other night. And this was another good game. In all honesty, North Central played Cal Lu really well throughout the course of this tournament. Cal Lutheran, took advantage of starter Nick Anderson's struggles to find the strike zone. Anderson walked in a run in the bottom half of the first inning, but Cal Lutheran only got 2 runs across. It was 2-1 after 1. It was 3-2 after 3. And Cal Lutheran put a 5 spot on the board in the 4th. And although North Central chipped back away at it, including scoring 3 runs in the 8th inning, was just not enough as Cal Lutheran won 10-8.
It really wasn't enough. And you got to give Cal Lutheran a lot of credit. You look at the lineup and it's hitting up and down the line.
Yep.
And it's everybody's contributing, and that's how you're going to win a championship. You got to win it not just for one guy with a big bat, but you got to win it with everybody swinging the bats well.
You got to win it with one other thing, too, and we'll talk about that in a second. But to continue to wrap up this game, Chris Hill with 3 runs batted in, including a big home run, pair of hits. Walbacher, 3 for 5. John Carmody, the DH, with a pair of runs batted in. Nick Anderson took the loss. He fell to 3-3. Todd Frazier out of the bullpen, the first reliever not named Miguel Salud to enter the game for the Kingsmen in this tournament. He got the win in relief, 3 1/3 innings. Salud did, of course, pitch because it's a day of the week. Inning and 2/3 for his 13th save, and now well over 30 appearances on the season. So, you know, for all we know, he may well come out and start game 1 of the championship series. Probably not, but you look at this matchup now between Cal Lutheran, Washington, and Jefferson, a game in which neither team is going to have their top starter available, I would assume. Riley Groves, number 1 starter for W&J, pitched on Saturday, so for him to come back on Monday is not something worth discussing. Marshall Pouch, who, if he came back for this game, he'd be on 2 days rest. But if you look beyond that, man, I mean, Cal Lutheran, we talked about it in our piece earlier this week. They basically only had 4 guys start games. And one of them is their starting catcher, Trey Saito, who hasn't pitched in a game since April 18th.
The cupboard's pretty bare. And I think if Cal Lutheran is going to win a championship, they're going to have to do it in 2 games because they may not have enough pitching to go to game number 3.
Well, if they do it in 2 games, might they do it in game 2 and game 3?
They might have to, but I think they're going to sit there, and I think we're going to see Sato pitch. He's the last pitcher they have who's had some starting experience, and if he gets in trouble, don't expect that he's going to stay out there too long.
Yeah, it's been interesting. As, you know, Saito, as we mentioned, pitched fairly regularly, including pitched a couple of conference games, but hasn't pitched since April 18th. Part of that, we've been told, is because he was just hitting the ball real well. In April and May, he has hit the ball real well, and they didn't want to mess with that. They didn't need him, right? They only needed 3 pitchers to get out of the regional. But it'll be interesting to see. If we were kind of plotting it out now, you could expect to maybe see Trey Saito, or maybe they go complete bullpen by committee or starter by committee and try to throw 4 guys out there for 2 innings and Salud to finish it off, or somehow get through game 1 that way. Then you could come back in game 2 on Tuesday with Marshall Pouch on at least 3 days rest. That's a possibility. And then, of course, Wayner would be available in game 3 or to clean up game 2 if necessary as well. Similarly for W&J, we talked about the fact that Grove's certainly not going to be available. Brian Schnatterly, who started the first game of the series here for the Presidents, probably not available as well. He would be going on 2 days rest. So then you're looking at Heslin is a guy who threw 4 innings in the regional. He started game 2 of the regional against Earlham. Santino Platt is a guy who's worked in relief, but he also got a start in the conference tournament. We know they can stretch him out and go long. He threw 116 pitches in 8 1/3 innings against Grove City back on May 13th. So he's a guy who could go long. And then if you get through game 1 like that, you could come back with Schnatterly right on 3 days rest, and then Groves in game 3 if you needed him in game 3, or in game 2 if you need him to clean up game 2.
I think we're going to see number 4 tomorrow. You're going to keep your best pitcher for your the final game. And I suspect that we'll see Sato. I think we'll see maybe one of those other options. But certainly if it goes 3 games, I think the odds are good for Washington Jefferson to bring back the first baseball championship.
We talked about Marsico throwing 3 innings in relief today and why that was key. Marsico's also a guy who's had some starting experience for W&J, but having used him for 3 innings on Sunday, suspect you won't see him on Monday in that capacity. I'm looking forward to this championship series, Jim. These are one team who's never been here, one team who hasn't been here in this situation in Appleton. They haven't been this deep in the series or in the series at all since 1999. And I'm looking forward to one where it's just clean, all of a sudden we go from four games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to just one baseball game on Monday. How about that?
It's going to be pretty light, and so we're going to be able to get some sleep tonight, and we're going to be able to get some sleep tomorrow. So it's going to be great. We're going to be well rested, and I'm looking forward to a good, fun 2 days of championship baseball.
Before we leave this show, because we're not going to probably have 10-minute shows based on one game over the course of the next couple of days. Before we leave, though, I want to talk about A, the run that Roanoke was on, and B, just kind of the way. Just how emotional Matt McGuire was in the post-game news conference. Matt McGuire, not been head coach at Roanoke for very long. Roanoke hasn't had a baseball team for very long, let's be honest. But it was a young coach when he took over. He talked about the program, the school taking a chance on him, then the team taking a chance on him as well. This young guy coming in and very invested in this team's run, and it's so difficult to make a run, even though so many teams in baseball do it, right? We get lots of new teams here year after year. There's always a handful of teams that have never been to the World Series before. Still, to get to this level is just an accomplishment. They may, like many teams before them, they may never be back.
And they have, by far, have been the most successful team coming out of the ODAC. We've had several other teams out of the ODAC, and they have not done nearly as well. I think this is going to do well for his recruiting. It's going to do well for his future. So he wants to be back, and I would not be surprised if Roanoke at one point in time does not come back.
So he's Jim Dixon. I'm Pat Coleman as we're wrapping up a Sunday in Appleton, Wisconsin. Check out all the rest of our coverage on d3baseball.com and tune in on Monday at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific for Game 1 of the Division III Championship Series between California Lutheran University and Washington and Jefferson College.